We are live. Welcome, everybody. This is the Rapid Diffs Weekly, aka New Diffs Weekly. We changed the name recently. So yeah, let's go straight to the agenda. Stas, I think you have the first one, right?
I shared the link to the work breakdown document. Basically, it contains all the stuff we need to do from beginning to the end. So feel free to look at it, leave comments, maybe some edits, especially if you think something is missing. Your feedback will be very much valued. Yeah, looking forward to collaborating on that. Also, Paulina, you requested edit permissions.
Yeah.
I think I've already resolved it. I switched that all GitLab members can edit this document.
Great, thank you. I've got it. Yeah, I wanted to touch on the accessibility and the automated tests. And I think we should default to it actually, because it takes 57% of manual testing. Yeah, I even think we could start in like a sort of like TDD fashion. So prepare the tests first and then yeah, just implement the diffs against those. And I have a question because I'm not sure about that. Like I made a branch and I wanted to do to implement the tests right now for the diffs right now. So I'm thinking like, is how much the end results just of the diff view of each type of file would be the same in terms of like HTML structure? Because I think like maybe I can already prepare tests. They will have fails with the current implementation, but maybe we can just have sort of like the same tests and have them run against both implementations. Yeah, so I'm not sure about that. Like, what's the I saw the ham components in that document that would be created. So I suspect that the HTML output might differ quite a bit, but it may also not. So yeah, I need clarification on that.
I don't think there's anything that stops us from kind of porting everything that we have on Vue to HAML, like preserving all the structure. I don't think we have like strict requirements regarding that for now, but I wouldn't count on that right now. Like it can change during the development. We can find some pitfalls, like some HTML structure wouldn't be actually convenient for us. So for now, I would say if you can test using data test IDs, you should do that, because we can just simply add these attributes to our new markup and it will work. But I don't think we'll save exactly the same structure or the tags when we start working on this.
That's actually good because there's lots of dimensions with the current one. So yeah, okay, good, thanks.
Andre, I think you have some points.
Yes, I just noticed. Yeah, about the access, I was just gonna suggest accepting changes from everybody. It's just the most efficient. Just make sure that everybody who's contributing, just make sure that the people involved are notified so that we can have a discussion about it. Just don't remove anything without talking to them first. Additions, I think they're more than welcome, but removals definitely need to be discussed first. In Stas, you have.
Yeah, I'm just making some clarification. We can remove stuff from this document, but we need some reasoning first.
Yes.
Why this needs to be removed. And to do that, you can leave comments right against any of the points in the document, and then we can discuss it.
But additions, have you changed the access level yet?
Yeah, I think everyone can edit right now.
Yep, confirmed. Yep, awesome. Right, my next point then, feedback from the breakdown. It looks good. Like, it definitely looks that you were able to catch a lot of the things that we that we've been discussing. I like specifically the unknowns section because those are the ones that we probably need to get some more clarity. One of the things that I noticed, I think we can use the section about tooling, which is, I think, what Paulina was mentioning about automated testing. I think I also want to have a specific item about performance tracking so that we can get it against acceptance criteria that we've defined. And, if you can have automated tooling for this particular project, I think it would be good to kind of like assess that and keep us on our track. It was one thing that came to mind as I was speaking, and then it went away. Right. So one of the things we had there in the acceptance criteria, I think, is that we need the project to be able to run independently of GitLab. We need to probably just, in the process of those items, we can probably like clarify that a bit more, because since it's server-side rendered, it's going to be a bit tighter to have everything detached from GitLab. But we can talk about the front-end architecture being agnostic. It could be rendered anywhere. So we can talk about that in the specific items. I just think that we need potentially to tweak the blueprint a bit more now that we have a bit more clarity on the path ahead. So section about tooling, which Pauline is adding. Yes, and the question to you, Stas, and everyone who was involved, like, how were you all thinking about handling the unknowns? What's the best course of action there? Do we just schedule them as spikes and then we tackle them during the milestones? Do we have group discussions? Because, for example, the front-end architecture is the big one that I think we need to, ourselves, the front-end folks, need to get together to kind of like discuss the details and the architecture and the proposals and all the discussions that we've had. But how should we go about that? Is that a spike? Is that a group discussion? Is that both? Any thoughts?
I think for front-end architecture, especially, it has to be a discussion, like a group discussion. We have to have at least 2 meetings in addition to what we have before, because that is not something you you just decide on in one go. For other stuff, I think the later we can make a decision on these things, the better it is for us. Because, for example, caching strategy, it can have like a really big impact on the implementation. And because we have a lot of unknowns as of now, like how it is going to work end to end, if we decide on caching now, it might not work best in the result. Like, we probably need to figure out other questions before doing that. And some issues are not that really important to solve right now. For example, we have this open question about midstream errors. Like, how do we handle if our Rails server just hangs up or gives us an error? How do we tell browser that the request is actually failed? I did some investigations, and seems like Puma doesn't really do that. It doesn't handle this. And that might mean we need to switch to Falcon at some point. But this is not something we need to decide right now. So I would think that we need to find things that we have to decide early on and probably make group conversations. And for other stuff, do it later.
Okay, so we'll go case by case basis. I think that's fine. I think the biggest one that was on my mind was exactly the front end discussions. I think I haven't been pushing that because we have 2 other things in flight, big efforts in flight, and I think it's good to get those out the way so that then we can focus on that specifically. And yeah, that works out okay. We can handle that. I think after the summit is probably like the best time to kind of, we already have the breakdown into epics and issues, and then we can get a plan going. By the way, we on both source code and code review, I think more in code review than source code, but we did save some buffer for the Rapid Diffs breakdown. So we do have some capacity to get started on 1611. So we all might want to start looking at this document and to think what would be the first things we would pick up. And there's some preparation work there that I think would probably be a good start, but we also want to get unknowns ahead. So start thinking about which ones would you prefer, and then we can have a little chat about it. on the week after the summit. Cool. Thanks, Nas. Thanks, everyone. It's been great to see that taking shape. Did Patrick and Thomas, have you weighed in? Do you still have to go through it again? I know that Patrick's not on the call. I'm aware.
Yeah, I would still need to go through it. I just saw it this morning.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I really have any input on really is the like front end architecture type stuff, because that's where my expertise is. So,
and we're definitely going to have those discussions. It is in the unknowns.
Yeah.
So I think we're good to go. All right. I think we're good for now. Can we move on, I guess? All right. Stas.
I have a question about data flow diagrams. So I've looked at it, and from my perspective, it seems like we might need some details there, because, for example, if you look like at the full request breakdown, it doesn't actually mention that we do a lot of things at once. For example, it says like if we have a cache, just like return the cache, but that is not the case, because apart from cache, we'll still have to fetch permissions for a specific user, like what he can do with the file, and we have to glue that with the cached version of the div. And I was thinking, like, does it bring any benefits to make this more detailed, or we should stay like with a very top view of the picture approach? What do you think?
Yeah, I think at this stage, the sequence diagram is the one that I think is more useful to be as detailed as possible, as we already know. But with the caveat that there might be some things missing and changed during implementation. I think for this stage is good enough of a granularity. But yeah, for the others, I think we're fine just abstracting that a bit higher. Any other thoughts?
Yes. I think I agree that it should be more detailed. That's part of the reason that I need people, particularly from the back end, to fill that type of stuff in, like permissions checking, because I just don't know where that happens, and like that's why it's not in there. Because I'm like, this is gonna happen, but I don't know how. So that's one thing. The other thing is the last data flow diagram, which is like the whole life cycle. You can see I've filled in like a bunch of sub chunks in the front end, but we haven't really explored that. So it's just the diagram skips it, and then it goes to the back end where it's much less detailed, but there are more arrows. So I think we should fill in more of those specifics. The problem, and this is the one problem, these sequence diagrams get really hard to read pretty fast. Like the backend one is not super like detailed, and it's already like kind of hard to read. So I don't know what we should do with that.
I think you can like if you have a specific operation that is complex, you can do like keep it high level in one diagram, but then reference a separate sequence diagram just for that box.
Yeah.
But I think that's what also, for example, checking permissions is good enough at this stage. If we already know we have to do that, I think that's good enough. But I wouldn't go down to the specific call that we need to do for checking permissions or something like that. As long as we know which system we're querying that from, I think that's good enough. Because that's the thing that's going to matter for understanding the system. Because, for example, when we're looking at the caching, we want to be able to look at the diagram and see, right, if we cache just the diffs, we still need to have that query live done on every request. Or should we include that in the cache somehow with a shorter TTL? So yeah, it's as soon as it starts getting unreadable, maybe stop and call it there. I don't know. Because there's one thing in my mind whenever we're doing this sort of things. Documentation is only productive for our own understanding, the team's understanding. It's not shipping anything, right? So we need to kind of like measure the level of effort we put into these, because we could be documenting things until next year and nothing gets shipped. So very soon we want to get cracking. So maybe time box it until the end of the milestone, which is not a lot, given that some of us will be at the summit. Like whatever we can do to finish up this week or something, let's do it. We can always come back to it and detail a bit more, but let's have a target to have things in the docs by the end of the week, even if they're not complete. Does that sound feasible? Even if they're not perfect, let's put it that way.
Yes, definitely feasible. I mean, even the current backend diagram has an authorization like sequence step to it. It's just not deep. So,
and we haven't started putting the things into the repository because we were waiting for the breakdown, was it?
yes, I think
Saw a
so.
message.
Yes,
So maybe yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of clarify what Stas, how you wanted to synchronize these two, or like what you wanted to wait for, because I know you wanted to wait to move these things in until you had the breakdown. Was there anything other than this?
This was just necessary to make sure the breakdown doesn't go in conflict with the data flow.
Yeah,
I think it doesn't right now, because data flow is more of like a general picture, and breakdown is exactly the steps we need to take. So I think we are good to move this to the blueprint and finalize the exact work we need to do.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Right, let's get those MRs going. And Thomas, if you need any help from the DRIs individually to tweak out the commits or something like that, call them out on the MR, and let's try to get this merged by Friday, because then we'll be in a good spot to come back to it with the docs already updated. One question though related to that, there's a pending step we need to do, which is to rename the blueprint. Should we rename the blueprint? Should we keep it as a code name? Should we just, when I say rename the blueprint, is like rename the file, rename the title of the blueprint, all that stuff? Or should we keep the file as like a legacy homage to the OG name and just change the text of the markdown? What do y'all think? I just inserted that point there. Do you have a thought? Do you have thoughts on that?
I think if we're gonna advertise it at the conference as rapid reusable diffs, we should name it that before that happens, so that it's searchable.
Findable. And that includes the file name, Thomas?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, yeah.
So let's coordinate after the call, you and me, and we can whip out an MR to rename it quickly. And then you can start the data flow work on top of that branch, even if it's not merged.
Yeah.
Since we're on topic of the name, can I have second suggestion that we drop the like reusable part? Because I think we are not using it so much, like we're also calling it Rapid Diffs. And since it's just like for marketing for customers, they don't really care that it's reusable, and they'll just call it Rapid Diffs.
Well, now, Paulina, you agree?
Yeah, it sounds better. It's easier to remember, like short.
So now I have a problem. The posters are already out for printing, so I can't change the poster.
I'll take a Sharpie. We can cross it out.
They are not reusable anymore.
I was gonna say that sends the opposite message. We're like, not reusable.
we changed our minds. That's a very fair comment, Stas. What I'm thinking is I'm okay in just updating the naming. We have been referencing it as a Rapid Diffs. I always like to have some quirk in the names, like gosh, what's that recursive acronym from Linux? GNU. GNU, not Unix kind of thing. I always like to have some query code in the naming, and that would be this one, like reusable. Oh wait, but I saw that as Rapid Diffs. It's the same thing. But you're right, it could be confusing. But for now, I would probably suggest keeping it synchronize with a poster for the summit, and then later we can drop it or something. It has been useful in a couple of discussions that I've had. Like I'll say that. So it's even if it's not visible for the engineering perspective, as I'm talking to PMs and stuff, it does spark. Because we've talked about this in the past. Like there's going to be a hurdle to go through over the next couple of months, which is scheduling. And when we're talking about, at the group product manager and even higher spheres, they have to understand exactly what's coming. And if you look at the poster, there's part of it, which is like, what's going to come out of this? How are we going to benefit GitLab with this effort? And we try to pitch that part. But yeah, so I'm happy to revise it later, but I think for the summit, at least, let's keep it the way it is now. So we can use that for, the name of the file could be just Rapid Diffs, so we don't have to rename it again. But the title on the markdown could be reusable Rapid Diffs in parentheses if you want. And is that a compromise you'd accept, Stas?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Shake on it. All right. Deal. All right, moving on then. What's next? Did we all talk about this? Yeah, okay, so I have the next one. Well, it's just about this, the Rapid Diffs poster. Is anybody clear on what the poster is? All right, I'll give you in essence.
Yeah, could you please elaborate?
So the poster is something that came from our CTO, and her perspective is that this is something that is usually done in academic contexts to like surface a bite-sized view of projects and ideas and papers or whatever. In our case, is to surface projects and teams to the wider GitLab and give everyone time to go through the room, physically look at the posters of other projects that run in GitLab, and then be able to discuss with somebody in the project or in the team. We did one for source code, front-end and back-end. We did one for code review, back-end and front-end. We did one for reusable Rapid Diffs. And we have something else from source code that Vasily also prepared. The idea there is then to have somebody, it's going to be a session on Wednesday that lasts 3 hours. And during those 3 hours, we need to have somebody, one person, assigned to the poster to be standing next to it, so that someone coming by have questions or thoughts or like want to help. You'll be there to kind of talk about the project and to answer any questions people might have. Yes, and the PDF has already been put in the Google Drive. It's already been sent to a printer in Vegas that will be picked up by somebody and then brought to the hotel and splattered, exposed, exhibited. That's kind of it. That's all I know. For the people though, I think I already talked to Thomas. Since Stanislav won't be there and Patrick won't be there, I think I'm going to step in and be taking a shift. Thomas, you'll be taking another shift, and another one would be good to have a back end. So Igor, I'm kind of like leaning on you to be a forced volunteer if you'd like, unless you really don't want to, and I can find someone else.
Yeah, I can stand by any poster. Yeah, Rapid Diffs or source code team. So yeah, I can do that.
So the idea, just stand there, look awesome, and just thumbs up everything that we do. Yeah, thanks for that. Because a lot of us will have other different responsibilities. Paulina has her product accessibility working group posted a show to talk about as well. I have my other team, so it'll be good to have that backup as well. So, right, I'll go ahead with that plan. And with that being said, Igor, you have another point in the agenda.
Yeah, it's just a quick point that Patrick implemented and enabled the caching of conflicts data. Yeah, and the Stanislav's big merge request. Yeah, it's much faster now. Yeah, on the second load. So yeah, thank you, Patrick, for implementing it and enabling it. It's much faster. And just a quick note that it's now a bit clear on some other bottlenecks. Yeah, for example, I noted that Diffs metadata request, yeah, we load all data there, yeah, like data about every file, yeah, not like paginated. So I haven't checked it yet, but maybe Stanislav, maybe you remember. What do we plan to change anything about this request, or do we still have to perform it unchanged?
Can you clarify which request you're talking about?
It's called diffs metadata.
Oh, you mean when we have lots of entries in the file browser?
Yeah. Probably it's responsible for file browser. Yeah, either file browser or we load the metadata and then we take like the file names or something like this. Oh yeah, it's probably related to file browser, so it shouldn't be related to Rapid Diffs. So probably it answers the question. But anyway, something to have a look. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually curious why it takes a second there to like give all the list of files, because it doesn't do
the
like the
field
processing.
diff file, which is called diff files, and it loads metadata about every file. So if we have like 300 of files, it loads the data about 300 files. Yeah.
So it doesn't cache it, I guess. It goes to database straight and just fetches it from database, right?
Yeah, and it's not cached, and the most critical part is that it's not like limited or paginated, so it can be like as slow as
I think we discussed it previously in our performance roundtables. Like this can be a bottleneck, but I think it is right now. Like a second is not great, but it's not terrible. And also we'll need to improve this endpoint, or should I say like the logic for getting these files when we will be implementing Rapid Diffs, because these diff files probably should be sent with the document. So we must find a way to cache this response the same way we cache the diffs. We should be able to cache these file browser entries. So it definitely is worth looking into, like how can we optimize it? Yeah, I think the cache is the first step, and if it doesn't work, then we can think about paginating this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And to be honest, for one moment I thought that it's a blocker. Like at first we fetch metadata and only after that we fetch the diffs, but it's not true. So, and I realized it only after I asked the question. So yeah, it's something to think about.
It was like that, but not like that. It was similar to that. So we fetched metadata and we fetched the diffs patch, but we didn't show you anything before we could get the metadata. And we changed that like almost a year ago. So it should be good.
So the funny thing about this in particular is that we've had a lot of lessons with the file browser and everything. We have an issue or have an item on the work breakdown to integrate with file browser, and I think potentially that can become a sub-epic to kind of like address this properly. One of the things that we've thought about is the layers of information. So first of all, the diffs metadata is being used to render the file browser and some other stuff, but we don't really need all the data right away. What we need to list the files and file names to get started on adding to the file tree. We then need some decorators to add the number of changes and that sort of thing, and some other mode information. What I'm thinking that we could potentially take some considerations on is loading that part in levels, not, how can I say, not in pages, but potentially first loading all the file names naked, so to speak, without decorators, and then later having a request to go and fetch decorators for each file, and then we match them. Because if we do that, we can decrease the CLS of cumulative layout shift by first rendering the files right away. We populate the file tree, it's just naked for the time being, and then the data falls into place. If we follow that logic, it's the same logic we had with when we started using GraphQL in design management, we were still doing the calls in the same way, just load every chunk of data that we needed in the first place in the beginning. And then later we realized, wait, there's no point. We can do this whenever way that the front end needs it to load. So we then changed the way that the app loaded, and it became much faster for those initial states. So a lot of those lessons will come into play now that we start to break this down. But I could see something like that come into play in implementing that. I'm very curious to see how this plays out with server-side rendering. How would we cache it? So, but that's definitely a discussion for another time, not here.
Also, a minor addition to what has been discussed. I think the main slowdown here comes from the fact that file hash is not stored in the database. So it is actually calculated on the fly. And Patrick has recently suggested actually storing file hash in the database instead of calculating it every time. And that would solve us two problems at once. First of all, we'll get a much faster retrieval of the file when using file hash, for example, a pinned file. And also it will speed up this endpoint significantly, I think. So definitely a thing to consider. Maybe we should involve Patrick here, because
I wouldn't mind dropping file hash altogether and consider the UIDs that we've talked about in the past. Thomas,
Yes.
I know that you're laughing because we had so much pain with clashes of files and same file being changed multiple times in the same MR. It could be an option to clean that up as well. But Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna reiterate that if we're gonna store an identifier in the database, it should actually be a unique identifier. And so far in our product, I don't think we have ever actually used a unique identifier. We've only used like things that are computed from values of the file, which can be duplicates. So if we're gonna store something in the database, we should generate a random ID for them. Just like solve this problem finally.
And to be clear on what you said, I remember that issue that you worked on was we were hashing a set of properties and coming out with a hash, and those properties weren't including whether it was the mode, I guess, of the file, and it means that in the same MR we had two files with the same hash, and that clashed with the front end, introduced a bunch of bugs. So I'm with you. If you're going to do something now. I know we want to reuse as much as possible, but it could be a good option to introduce some of those improvements. But we can move that discussion.
Yeah, even if hashes are unique per MR, the way that we hash files are not unique for like across MRs, because if we use the content SHA, the same content could change in two different MRs and be an identical hash because it's the same file, same content changes, all that stuff. And if we're ever going to do anything that isn't like single view, like reload all of the data for every time you load a new MR or whatever, if we're ever going to cache anything on the front end, we need to be able to uniquely identify two files. So
exciting. I think if we can come out of this with a simpler solution for that. I remember that whenever we get into these SHAs and hashes and all that stuff, I become older every time we discuss it. But all right, I think that cuts it for now. Anything else on this point 4 from Igor? Okay, so takes me to my 5. If you have any points, just add it to the agenda. But my last one, I want to keep this last. We currently have a conflict with this particular call with another group call in source code. And I was just wondering, we still haven't figured out which one is going to move, but I wanted to check if we move it to 30 minutes later, would we lose any of you? I'm looking at you, Stas, because you're the later one here.
No, I can make it.
So this is starting at 6:30 p.m. your time, right, Stas? This would be me starting from 7 all the way to 8 p.m. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so I'll check the state of the other call to see how late that would go for everybody, and whichever costs less will be moved. So that's a job for me, I guess, to figure out which one gets the axe. Cool. And Paulina, you want to voice that?
No,
You had a
just
comment.
like I'll be able to go to that one as well because I have a conflict with
Discord, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. So thank you for that. So yeah, I haven't changed the call yet. So next, just check the calendar. If I move it, I'll let you know on Slack. Any other points? No? All right. Good to see everybody. See some of you. Look at that. See some of you in Vegas. Some of you will stay behind, keeping the things rolling. So thank you for that, and have a great week, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.